Imagine standing at the edge of the most important moment of your life. Not a cliff edge, not a dramatic movie scene, but the real kind of edge that most people never tell you about because it is invisible. The edge where everything you have worked for, everything you have endured, everything you have practiced and prepared and silently hoped for, is right there. One step away. One decision away. One brave, irreversible moment away. Now imagine turning around and walking back. Not because the path was blocked. Not because someone stopped you. Not because the opportunity disappeared or the timing was wrong. But because something inside you, something quiet and fast and almost imperceptible, decided in a fraction of a second that you were not ready. That you might fail. That the cost of trying and falling short was somehow greater than the certain cost of never finding out at all. You have been here before. You may be here right now. You have felt the pull of an idea that would not leave you alone, and then watched yourself bury it under reasons. You have been on the verge of a conversation that could have changed everything, and felt your throat close around the words. You have been days away from launching, months away from finishing, moments away from committing, and felt an invisible hand press you back into the familiar. That invisible hand is what this audiobook is about. The invisible ceiling is not a metaphor. It is a mechanism. It is a real, neurologically grounded, psychologically reinforced structure that exists inside every human being who has ever tried to grow beyond the boundaries of what they have already known. It is not a character flaw. It is not evidence of weakness or unworthiness or insufficient ambition. It is a feature of the human brain that was enormously useful for thousands of years of evolutionary history, and that has become one of the most reliable destroyers of human potential in the modern world. Imagine standing at the edge of the most important moment of your life. Not a cliff edge, not a dramatic movie scene, but the real kind of edge that most people never tell you about because it is invisible. The edge where everything you have worked for, everything you have endured, everything you have practiced and prepared and silently hoped for, is right there. One step away. One decision away. One brave, irreversible moment away. Now imagine turning around and walking back. Not because the path was blocked. Not because someone stopped you. Not because the opportunity disappeared or the timing was wrong. But because something inside you, something quiet and fast and almost imperceptible, decided in a fraction of a second that you were not ready. That you might fail. That the cost of trying and falling short was somehow greater than the certain cost of never finding out at all. You have been here before. You may be here right now. You have felt the pull of an idea that would not leave you alone, and then watched yourself bury it under reasons. You have been on the verge of a conversation that could have changed everything, and felt your throat close around the words. You have been days away from launching, months away from finishing, moments away from committing, and felt an invisible hand press you back into the familiar. That invisible hand is what this audiobook is about. The invisible ceiling is not a metaphor. It is a mechanism. It is a real, neurologically grounded, psychologically reinforced structure that exists inside every human being who has ever tried to grow beyond the boundaries of what they have already known. It is not a character flaw. It is not evidence of weakness or unworthiness or insufficient ambition. It is a feature of the human brain that was enormously useful for thousands of years of evolutionary history, and that has become one of the most reliable destroyers of human potential in the modern world. Whether you are a creator who starts and stops and starts and stops the same project. Whether you are a person who knows, in the clearest and most certain part of yourself, that you are capable of far more than your current life reflects, this audiobook was written for you. The ceiling is real. The breakthrough is also real. And the distance between where you are and where you know you could be is not as far as it feels. It just requires that you understand what is actually standing in the way. The invisible ceiling is not a wall someone else built around you. It is a boundary your own brain drew to protect you. Understanding that distinction is the beginning of everything. Before we move into the introduction, if you are new to MindLab Audiobooks, I want to personally invite you to subscribe right now. Every week we release deeply researched, professionally narrated audiobooks on the psychology of wealth, performance, identity, and human potential. Subscribe today so that every commute, every workout, and every quiet moment becomes an investment in the mind you are actively rebuilding. Now, let us begin. Introduction: The enemy inside. There is a conversation that happens millions of times every single day, in offices and bedrooms and parked cars and quiet moments before sleep. It is a conversation between a person and the version of themselves that wants more, and the version that keeps explaining why more is not possible. It is not loud. It is not dramatic. In fact, if you are not listening carefully, you might not even notice it is happening. But it is the most consequential conversation of your life, because it determines, more than any external circumstance, what you will ultimately build, achieve, and become. The enemy in that conversation is not failure. It is not competition, not the economy, not the timing, not the industry, not the people who had advantages you did not have. The enemy is a specific set of internal mechanisms that the human brain uses to prevent change, and by extension, to prevent growth. These mechanisms are not malicious. They were designed to protect you. But they are operating with an instruction set that was written for a completely different environment than the one you are currently trying to thrive in. The research is unambiguous on this point. Across disciplines ranging from neuroscience to behavioral psychology to performance science, the evidence consistently points to the same conclusion: the primary obstacle to human achievement is not external circumstance but internal architecture. The beliefs people hold about who they are. The stories they repeat to themselves about what is possible. The automatic responses their nervous systems produce when presented with the conditions of growth. These factors predict outcomes with remarkable reliability, often more reliably than talent, resources, or opportunity. This audiobook is built on 3 foundational truths. The first is that your brain has a ceiling, an upper boundary of what it considers safe, acceptable, and consistent with your identity. And it will consistently work to keep you below that ceiling whether you are aware of it or not. The second truth is that this ceiling is not fixed. It is a learned structure, which means it can be unlearned and reconstructed. The third truth is that reconstruction is not a matter of willpower or motivation. It is a matter of understanding and applying the specific mechanisms through which identity, belief, and neural architecture change. In the chapters that follow, we will move through every major dimension of this internal architecture. We will start with a precise definition and description of the invisible ceiling itself, examining its neurological foundations and psychological manifestations. We will then move through the specific mechanisms through which it operates: identity anchoring, comfort dependency, fear architecture, imposter syndrome, procrastination, and the paradox of visibility. We will examine how the ceiling reasserts itself even after apparent breakthroughs, creating cycles of progress and retreat that frustrate even the most determined individuals. And then we will build the solution. Not as a collection of tips or techniques, but as a coherent, sequentially organized reprogramming protocol that addresses the ceiling at every level of its architecture. By the end of this audiobook, you will have a complete and actionable framework for identifying, confronting, and permanently dismantling the specific mechanisms that have been keeping you from the life you know you are capable of living. The journey begins with honesty. The kind of honesty that most personal development content carefully avoids, because it is uncomfortable and it does not lend itself to simple prescriptions. The honest truth is that the ceiling you are operating under is largely self-constructed. Not consciously, not maliciously, not through any failure of character. But through years of experience, conditioning, feedback, and the entirely natural human process of forming an identity that fits the life you have actually lived rather than the life you might be capable of living. That is where we begin. With the ceiling itself. Chapter 1: The Invisible Ceiling, What It Is, Where It Comes From, and Why You Cannot See It. A concept that changes everything. The concept of an invisible ceiling sounds abstract until the moment it becomes personal. Until the moment you recognize it in your own life with the sudden and slightly uncomfortable clarity of seeing something you have always known but never named. When that moment arrives, it tends to arrive with force. Because once you have the concept, you cannot unsee the pattern it describes. And the pattern is everywhere. The invisible ceiling is the upper limit of your comfort, confidence, and self-concept, expressed as a behavioral boundary. It is the point beyond which your brain begins to generate resistance, doubt, distraction, and avoidance, not because danger actually exists, but because the territory above the ceiling is unfamiliar. And to the human brain, unfamiliar and dangerous are, at a neurological level, essentially the same thing. It is invisible for a specific reason. The resistance it generates does not present itself as fear. It presents itself as rationality. The thoughts it produces sound like wisdom, caution, and responsible self-awareness. That is what makes it so powerful and so difficult to identify without a framework. When fear wears the costume of logic, you do not challenge it. You agree with it. You act on it. And you call it good judgment. The origins, how the ceiling gets built. To understand the invisible ceiling, you need to understand where it comes from. The ceiling is not born with you. You construct it, piece by piece, over the course of your life, from the raw materials of experience, feedback, observation, and emotional memory. The process begins in early childhood, before you have the cognitive capacity to evaluate or question the information you are receiving. Every experience of praise and punishment, every observation of how the adults around you respond to success and failure, every message you absorb about what kind of person you are and what kind of outcomes people like you tend to achieve, becomes data that your developing brain uses to construct a model of the world and your place in it. By the time you reach adulthood, this model is deeply encoded. It is not stored as a list of conscious beliefs you can examine on demand. It is stored as reflexes, as automatic responses, as the immediate, pre-conscious evaluation your brain makes every time you encounter an opportunity that requires you to operate beyond your established range. The ceiling, in other words, is not a thought. It is a reflex. And reflexes are far more difficult to override than thoughts. This is why the ceiling persists even in people who are consciously committed to growth, who understand the importance of taking risks, who have read the books and attended the seminars and hold all the right beliefs in the intellectual, verbal part of their minds. The ceiling operates below that level. It is faster than your reasoning and more deeply embedded than your intentions. Which is why intention alone is never enough to break through it. The reinforcement loop. Once the ceiling is established, it becomes self-reinforcing through a mechanism that is as elegant as it is frustrating. Every time you pull back from the edge, every time you stop before the breakthrough, every time you choose the familiar over the unfamiliar, the ceiling is confirmed. Your brain receives the signal that the boundary was correct, that the resistance was appropriate, and that the territory above the ceiling is indeed something to be avoided. This confirmation process strengthens the ceiling with every repetition. The neural pathways that generate avoidance behavior become more efficient. The rationalizations become more sophisticated. The emotional responses become faster and more automatic. Over time, the ceiling does not just stay where it is. It calcifies. It becomes harder to approach and harder to question with every passing year of reinforcement. The painful irony is that the more intelligent and self-aware you are, the more elaborate and convincing the rationalizations become. Highly intelligent people do not have simpler ceilings than less intelligent people. They have more elaborate ones, because their minds are better at constructing justifications that are difficult to argue with. This is one of the reasons why intelligence and high achievement do not correlate as strongly as most people assume. The invisible ceiling does not care how smart you are. It cares how deeply it is encoded. Why you cannot see your own ceiling. The invisibility of the ceiling is its most powerful property and its most important design feature. From the inside, the ceiling does not look like a limit. It looks like reality. The beliefs that constitute your ceiling feel like accurate descriptions of the world, not distortions of it. The resistance it generates feels like wisdom, not fear. The avoidance it produces feels like good judgment, not self-sabotage. This is why external perspective is so often the catalyst for recognizing a ceiling. A mentor, a coach, a trusted friend who knows you well enough to see the pattern you cannot see from inside it. These people do not see your ceiling as a mystery. They see it plainly, in the recurring themes of your behavior, the predictable points at which you pull back, the consistent narratives you use to explain why now is not the right time. Seeing your own ceiling requires building the capacity for a specific kind of self-observation, one that is neither judgmental nor defensive, but genuinely curious. It requires learning to watch your own resistance with the same detached interest you might apply to observing an interesting natural phenomenon. Not identifying with it. Not arguing with it. Just watching it, naming it, and understanding what it is telling you about the architecture of your limits. That capacity is something we will build throughout this audiobook. Because the first step to dismantling the ceiling is being able to see it clearly. And seeing it clearly is already an act of enormous courage. Chapter Summary. The invisible ceiling is the behavioral upper limit generated by the brain when confronted with opportunities or circumstances that exceed the established range of identity, confidence, and comfort. It is constructed from early experiences, feedback, and emotional memory, and is stored as reflexes rather than conscious beliefs, making it faster and more powerful than intentional reasoning. It becomes self-reinforcing with every avoidance behavior, calcifying over time. Its invisibility is its greatest power. From the inside, it presents itself as rationality rather than fear. Recognizing it requires building a specific capacity for detached self-observation that we will develop throughout this audiobook. Practical lessons and exercises. 1. Write down 3 situations in the past year where you felt resistance, doubt, or the urge to pull back from an opportunity. For each one, examine the thought that accompanied the resistance. Was it framed as logic? What specific words did it use? This is the beginning of mapping the surface of your ceiling. 2. Identify the recurring theme in the areas where you have plateaued. Not the external circumstances, but the internal story. What do you consistently tell yourself about why growth is difficult or unavailable in that area? Write it down without editing or softening it. The raw version is more useful than the polished one. 3. Ask one person who knows you well, a mentor, a close friend, or a business partner, to describe one pattern they have observed in your behavior that you might not see yourself. Listen without defending. The discomfort of this exercise is precisely what makes it valuable. 4. Spend 10 minutes this week sitting with a specific ambition you have been carrying without acting on. Not planning it, not analyzing it, but simply noticing what happens in your body and mind as you hold the thought of pursuing it. The sensations you notice are the ceiling making itself felt. Coming up next is Chapter 2, where we go deep into the neuroscience of self-sabotage and examine exactly how the brain confuses safety with success. Chapter 2, The Neuroscience of Self-Sabotage, How Your Brain Mistakes Safety for Success. The survival brain in a growth economy. Your brain is not designed for success. It is designed for survival. This distinction, which sounds almost trivially simple, carries profound and far-reaching implications for every person who has ever tried to build, grow, create, or achieve at a level beyond what they have already established. The human brain evolved over hundreds of thousands of years in an environment where the primary threats were physical, immediate, and potentially fatal. Predators. Hostile rivals. Starvation. Exposure. In that environment, the brain's risk detection systems were not just useful, they were essential. The individual who was cautious enough to avoid unnecessary exposure, conservative enough to preserve existing resources, and sensitive enough to danger signals to respond before the full threat materialized was more likely to survive and pass on their genes. Caution was selection positive. Risk aversion was adaptive. The environment has changed dramatically. The brain has not. The same neural systems that evolved to detect physical danger in the African savanna are now being deployed in office buildings, online marketplaces, creative studios, and boardrooms to evaluate the risks of a new business venture, a difficult conversation, a public performance, or a financial commitment. And the brain is making fundamental category errors. Because from the perspective of the amygdala, the brain's primary threat detection center, the threat posed by launching a new business and the threat posed by a physical predator are functionally indistinguishable. Both produce the same cascade of neurochemical responses. Both trigger the same behavioral impulses. Both feel, from the inside, like danger. And the brain's solution to danger is always the same: avoid, freeze, or fight. None of these responses is particularly useful for navigating a complex modern opportunity. The neurochemistry of self-sabotage. When you approach the edge of your ceiling, a specific sequence of neurochemical events unfolds. It begins in the amygdala, which processes incoming information for threat signals before the prefrontal cortex, the seat of rational thought and long-term planning, has had the opportunity to evaluate it. This sequencing matters enormously. It means that the emotional response to perceived threat arrives before the rational response, and it colors and shapes the rational evaluation that follows. The amygdala triggers the release of cortisol and adrenaline, the stress hormones associated with the fight or flight response. These hormones have specific effects on cognitive function. They narrow attention, directing focus toward the perceived threat rather than the broader context. They accelerate processing of threat-related information while slowing processing of non-threat information. They bias memory retrieval toward previous experiences of threat and failure. And critically, they suppress activity in the prefrontal cortex, reducing your capacity for rational evaluation, long-term thinking, and creative problem-solving precisely when you need these capacities most. The result of this neurochemical cascade is a mind that is primed to perceive danger, recall failures, focus on risks, and make fast, conservative decisions. A mind that is, in other words, perfectly designed to confirm every fear you have about the opportunity in front of you. Neuroscience is not working against you maliciously. It is working exactly as designed. But the design is wrong for the moment you are in. Homeostasis, the biology of the ceiling. Beyond the stress response, there is another neurological mechanism at the heart of the invisible ceiling, homeostasis. The tendency of biological systems to maintain a stable internal state despite external change. Homeostasis is why your body regulates temperature, blood pressure, blood sugar, and hundreds of other variables within narrow ranges regardless of what is happening in your environment. It is one of the most fundamental and most powerful properties of living systems. The brain applies homeostatic principles not just to physiological variables but to psychological ones, including your sense of who you are, what you are capable of, and what your life should look like. When you begin to operate significantly outside of your established psychological range, whether by achieving at a much higher level than before, commanding attention you are not accustomed to, earning more than you have previously earned, or occupying a role that is larger than your established identity, the brain generates corrections. Behavioral, emotional, and cognitive corrections designed to bring you back within the familiar range. These corrections are the invisible ceiling in action. The sudden loss of confidence just as a project approaches completion. The inexplicable urge to undermine a relationship that is going unusually well. The compulsion to make a careless mistake at the precise moment when sustained focus would deliver an exceptional result. These are not accidents. They are homeostatic corrections. The brain returns the system to its established equilibrium, even when that equilibrium is far below what is possible. Rewiring the biology. The critical insight of modern neuroscience is that the brain is plastic. It changes in response to experience. The neural pathways that constitute the ceiling are not permanent features of your neurological architecture. They are learned patterns that can be unlearned and replaced. This process, called neuroplasticity, is the biological foundation of the reprogramming work this entire audiobook is designed to support. The reprogramming process requires understanding something important about how neural change occurs. The brain does not change through insight alone. It changes through repeated experience. Specifically, through repeated experience of operating in the territory above the ceiling and surviving, even thriving. Every time you step into the unfamiliar and return intact, the brain receives new data about the actual level of threat that territory contains. Over time, with sufficient repetition, the threat signal diminishes. The homeostatic range expands. The ceiling rises. This is the mechanism behind the truth that most people who have achieved significant breakthroughs describe in retrospect. The first time was the hardest, and it got progressively easier from there. Not because the objective challenges diminished, but because the brain updated its threat assessment. The ceiling moved. And once it moves, it rarely returns to exactly where it was. Chapter summary. The human brain evolved for survival, not success, and its threat detection systems apply survival logic to growth challenges with results that are systematically counterproductive. The amygdala fires before the prefrontal cortex processes information, producing emotional responses that color and bias rational evaluation in the direction of threat and avoidance. Cortisol and adrenaline suppress the very cognitive capacities needed to navigate complex opportunities. Homeostasis, the brain's tendency to maintain stable internal states, generates behavioral corrections whenever you begin to operate significantly outside your established psychological range. The corrective news is neuroplasticity. The brain changes through experience, and repeated successful navigation of territory above the ceiling gradually lowers the threat signal and raises the ceiling itself. Practical lessons and exercises. 1. The next time you feel resistance to a growth opportunity, pause before acting on it. Ask yourself a single question: is this response coming from rational evaluation or from the threat system? You will not always be able to tell, but the habit of asking begins to create the space between stimulus and response where choice becomes possible. 2. Identify one small action this week that places you just slightly above your current comfort level. Not dramatically above it. Just slightly. The goal is to collect data, not to perform heroism. Notice what happens when you take that action. What was the actual outcome relative to the feared outcome? Document the discrepancy. This is your first piece of evidence against the threat narrative. 3. Research basic mindfulness or breathwork practices this week. The physiological stress response can be modulated by deliberate breathing patterns that activate the parasympathetic nervous system and reduce cortisol levels. This is not mystical. It is mechanical, and it gives you a practical tool for managing the neurochemical conditions in which you make important decisions. 4. Notice your homeostatic corrections this week. If you find yourself inexplicably sabotaging something that is going well, or feeling suddenly tired or unmotivated right when sustained effort would deliver a significant result, name it. Say to yourself, this is homeostasis. I am not in danger. My brain is trying to restore the familiar. That naming does not eliminate the pull, but it separates you from it enough to choose differently. Next, in Chapter 3, we examine the identity anchor, the most fundamental and most invisible reason why you cannot consistently outperform the person you believe yourself to be. Chapter 3, The Identity Anchor, Why You Cannot Outperform the Person You Believe You Are. The self-concept as operating system. Beneath every behavioral pattern, beneath every habit and every choice and every reflexive response to opportunity or challenge, there is a story. A story about who you are. What kind of person you are. What people like you tend to achieve. What is possible for someone with your background, your history, your particular combination of strengths and limitations. This story is your identity. And it functions as the operating system of your life. Operating systems are invisible infrastructure. You do not think about your phone's operating system when you use your phone. You simply experience the interface it produces. Similarly, you do not typically think about your identity when you are making decisions. You simply experience the choices, preferences, and responses it generates. But the operating system is determining everything. Every application that can run, every process that is permitted, every output that is possible is constrained by the operating system underneath. This is why identity change is the foundation of behavioral change. You cannot consistently produce outputs that are inconsistent with your operating system. You can occasionally override it through extraordinary effort or exceptional circumstances. But over time, the operating system reasserts itself. It pulls behavior back toward what is consistent with its programming. Until the programming changes, the behavior cannot sustainably change. The identity anchor effect. The identity anchor is the specific mechanism through which your self-concept limits your performance. When a behavior, an achievement, an income level, or a type of relationship is consistent with your identity, it feels natural, sustainable, and deserved. When it is inconsistent with your identity, it feels uncomfortable, unsustainable, and somehow wrong, even when it is objectively better than what you had before. This dissonance between identity and behavior generates powerful corrective forces. People who earn significantly more than their identity says they should tend to find ways to lose the excess. People who achieve levels of recognition that exceed their self-concept tend to undermine the achievement or discount it. People who enter relationships that are significantly healthier or more fulfilling than what their identity says they deserve tend to sabotage those relationships or exit them prematurely. The identity anchor is not choosing failure. It is choosing consistency. From the brain's perspective, consistency is more important than quality. A consistent self-concept, even a limited one, provides the predictability and stability that the nervous system requires to function. An inconsistent self-concept, even one that is objectively better, feels destabilizing. The brain resolves this by making behavior consistent with identity, not with aspiration. How identity gets written. Your current identity was not chosen. It was assembled from the experiences, relationships, successes, failures, praise, criticism, and cultural messages that you encountered from your earliest years. The most formative identity inputs arrived when you were younger, because the developing brain is most malleable, most open to imprinting, and least equipped to critically evaluate the validity of the information it is receiving. A child who is told frequently that they are smart assembles a different identity architecture than a child who is told they are not academic. A child who observes their parents speaking about money with fear and scarcity assembles a different relationship to financial identity than a child who grows up in a home where wealth is treated as normal and achievable. A child who attempts something ambitious and is met with encouragement even in failure assembles a different orientation to risk than a child whose attempts are met with criticism or dismissal. None of these experiences determines your ceiling permanently, but they determine the starting architecture. And most people spend their entire lives operating within the ceiling that early architecture imposed, not because they are incapable of more, but because they never received the instruction set for rebuilding the architecture itself. The gap between aspiration and identity. One of the most common and most painful experiences of personal growth is the gap between what you consciously aspire to and what your identity will allow you to sustain. You aspire to build a successful business, but your identity says you are not someone who manages complexity well. You aspire to earn significantly more, but your identity encodes money as something other people have. You aspire to lead with confidence, but your identity positions you as someone who waits for permission. This gap produces a specific and recognizable pattern. You move toward the aspiration, feel the pull of the identity anchor, and retreat. You try again from a different angle, get further this time, feel the anchor again, and retreat slightly less. You interpret this cycle as evidence of your limitations rather than recognizing it as evidence of the identity gap. And the interpretation itself becomes part of the story. I try and try but I keep falling short, which must mean that the aspiration was beyond me after all. It was not beyond you. It was beyond your current identity. And the correct response is not to lower the aspiration. It is to raise the identity. That is the work of reprogramming that later chapters address in full detail. Identity and the invisible ceiling. The connection between identity and the invisible ceiling is direct and causal. Your ceiling is set precisely at the boundary of your current identity. The ceiling is not an external limit. It is the edge of who you believe yourself to be. This means that every effort to break through the ceiling without also addressing the identity underneath will produce temporary gains that are ultimately unsustained. And it means that addressing the identity directly, methodically, and at a foundational level is the most efficient path to permanently raising the ceiling. This is the insight that most achievement-oriented content misses entirely. It addresses the behavior without addressing the identity that generates the behavior. And the result is that people work extremely hard, make temporary progress, and then watch the progress erode back to the level their identity permits. Understanding this mechanism is not discouraging. It is liberating. Because it tells you exactly what to work on. Chapter summary. Your identity functions as the operating system of your behavior, silently determining what outputs are possible and pulling behavior back into alignment with its programming when deviations occur. The identity anchor is the mechanism through which self-concept limits performance, behaviors, achievements, and relationships that are inconsistent with identity feel wrong even when they are objectively better. Identity is assembled from early experience and is not consciously chosen, but it is also not permanent. The gap between aspiration and identity produces the characteristic cycle of advance and retreat that many people misinterpret as evidence of their limitations rather than evidence of an identity requiring upgrade. The ceiling is set precisely at the boundary of current identity, making identity work the foundational path to permanently raising it. Practical lessons and exercises. 1. Write 3 sentences that begin with the phrase, "I am the kind of person who." Write them quickly, without editing. Then examine what you have written. These sentences are a surface-level map of the identity programming that is currently constraining your ceiling. 2. Identify one area of your life where you have made repeated attempts to change a behavior without sustained success. Instead of analyzing the behavior, analyze the identity underneath it. What does your self-concept say about you in that domain? What would it mean to your identity if you fully succeeded? That answer often reveals the specific anchor point. 3. Research one person who successfully transformed their identity rather than just their behavior. Study what they describe as the internal shift that preceded the external change. The inside-out sequencing of their story is the mechanism, not the circumstance. 4. Begin an identity journal this week. Each day, write one sentence describing the person you are becoming, not the person you currently are. Write it in the present tense, as if it is already true. This practice is not self-deception. It is the deliberate construction of a new operating system, one sentence at a time. Chapter 4 takes us into the comfort catastrophe, examining the hidden and compounding cost of choosing the familiar over the possible. Chapter 4, Comfort Catastrophe, the hidden cost of playing it safe. The comfort illusion. Comfort is presented to us as a goal. Advertisers sell it. Social systems reward it. Human biology craves it. We are told that a good life is a comfortable life, that security is the highest form of success, and that the absence of friction is a sign that things are going well. We spend enormous amounts of energy, money, and creative capacity pursuing comfort. Eliminating inconvenience. Reducing risk. Smoothing the rough edges of daily experience. What we are almost never told is what this pursuit costs. Not in money. In potential. The comfort catastrophe is the cumulative loss produced by chronic avoidance of the discomfort that growth requires. It is not a dramatic single event. It is the invisible tax that is levied on every day you choose familiar over unfamiliar, safe over uncertain, known over possible. Individually, each choice feels reasonable. Collectively, across months and years and decades, they compound into a life that is dramatically smaller than it needed to be. The tragedy of the comfort catastrophe is that it is almost entirely invisible to the person experiencing it. Because the losses are not experienced as losses. They are experienced as choices. Reasonable, adult, responsible choices. The decision not to launch the business, not to make the ask, not to go for the bigger opportunity, each one arrives accompanied by a completely convincing rationale. And because each individual decision feels justifiable, the cumulative pattern is rarely seen for what it is. The biology of comfort seeking. The drive toward comfort is not a moral failing. It is a biological imperative. The brain is a prediction machine that runs on energy, and its primary operating goal is to minimize uncertainty while maximizing the probability of reward. Familiar environments, familiar behaviors, and familiar outcomes are cheaper to process than novel ones. They require less cognitive load, less neurochemical expenditure, and less uncertainty tolerance. The neurochemical reward for choosing comfort is immediate and real. Dopamine, the brain's primary reward signal, fires not just in response to good outcomes but in response to predicted outcomes. When you choose the familiar, when you make the safe choice, the brain rewards you with a small hit of dopamine for having successfully avoided uncertainty. The brain is, in essence, rewarding you for not growing. And because the reward is immediate while the cost of foregone growth is distant and diffuse, the math almost always favors comfort in the moment. This is why willpower approaches to overcoming comfort seeking are so unreliable. You are trying to override a biological reward system with a rational intention. The rational intention will win sometimes, in the short term, when motivation is high and the cost of the avoidance behavior is vivid. But over time, the biological system is more persistent. It is always running, always calculating, always offering the familiar path with its immediate reward. And it will eventually prevail unless the motivational structure changes at a deeper level than willpower can reach. Mapping the hidden costs. The cost of comfort seeking can be mapped across several dimensions, each of which tends to remain invisible without deliberate examination. The first dimension is the skills and capabilities that were never developed because the uncomfortable practice required to develop them was consistently avoided. Skills compound over time just as capital does. The person who consistently avoided the difficult work of mastering a high-leverage skill for a decade has not just lost 10 years of development. They have lost the compounding return on 10 years of development. The gap between where they are and where they could have been is not 10 years of linear growth. It is a decade of exponential compounding. The second dimension is the relationships and opportunities that were never formed because the vulnerable, uncertain, or potentially rejecting experience of forming them was avoided. Every relationship you did not initiate because the risk of rejection felt too high, every conversation you did not have because the potential conflict felt too uncomfortable, every room you did not enter because you were not sure you belonged, represents a network branch that never grew. And networks, like all compounding systems, produce value that is far disproportionate to the individual nodes. The third dimension is identity. Every time you avoid a challenge, your identity as someone who avoids challenges is reinforced. Every time you pull back from the edge, your self-concept as someone who lives below the edge is strengthened. The comfort habit is not just costing you external opportunity. It is progressively contracting your sense of what is possible for you. The growth edge, reframing discomfort. The antidote to the comfort catastrophe is not the pursuit of suffering. It is not the valorization of hardship for its own sake. It is a fundamental reframing of what discomfort means. Specifically, the recognition that discomfort is not a signal that something has gone wrong. It is a signal that something is happening. That you are operating in territory that is new, that is stretching your capabilities, that is building something. High-performing individuals across domains report a remarkably consistent relationship with discomfort. Not that they do not feel it. They feel it acutely. But they have learned to interpret it differently. Where the comfort-seeking brain reads discomfort as danger, the growth-oriented mind reads it as information. As evidence that the work matters, that the territory is new, and that something worth having is on the other side. This reframing is not wishful thinking. It is a learnable and trainable cognitive pattern that directly affects behavior. When discomfort is interpreted as danger, avoidance is the logical response. When discomfort is interpreted as a growth signal, engagement becomes the logical response. The interpretation is the leverage point. And the interpretation can be changed. Chapter summary. The comfort catastrophe is the cumulative loss of potential produced by systematic avoidance of growth requiring discomfort. It is invisible at the individual decision level but devastating at the aggregate level over years and decades. The biological drive toward comfort is genuine and neurochemically rewarded, making willpower-based approaches unreliable. The hidden costs of comfort seeking accumulate across skills, relationships, opportunities, and identity, compounding over time into a life significantly smaller than what was possible. The solution is not the pursuit of suffering but a trained reframing of discomfort as growth signal rather than danger signal, a shift that changes the logical response from avoidance to engagement. Practical lessons and exercises. 1. Conduct a comfort audit this week. For each day, identify one moment when you chose the comfortable option over the growth option. Do not judge the choice. Just notice it. At the end of the week, examine the pattern. What domains are most heavily comfort-governed in your current life? 2. Choose one small discomfort to deliberately engage with each day for the next 2 weeks. Make it specific and repeatable. The goal is not to achieve anything dramatic but to train the neural pathway of moving toward rather than away from discomfort. The habit of engagement matters more than the specific activity. 3. Calculate the compound cost of one comfort-driven pattern you have maintained for 5 or more years. Not in money necessarily, but in capability, relationship, or opportunity. The visceral recognition of the actual cost is often more motivating than any amount of abstract encouragement. 4. Read one account this week of someone who describes a breakthrough that required sustained engagement with significant discomfort. Focus specifically on how they describe the discomfort itself. What language do they use for it? How did their relationship with it change? You are studying the internal vocabulary of a growth-oriented mind. Next, Chapter 5 takes us into the fear architecture, where we map with precision every specific wall that stands between you and your breakthrough. Chapter 5, The Fear Architecture, Mapping Every Wall Between You and Your Breakthrough. Fear is not one thing. When people talk about fear as a barrier to growth, they often speak of it as though it were a single, monolithic force. As though there were simply a door marked fear and all you needed to do was gather enough courage to open it. This framing is not just inaccurate. It is actively counterproductive. Because if fear were one thing, facing it once would resolve it. And the persistent experience of most people is that it does not work that way. Fear, in the context of growth and achievement, is not a single force. It is an architecture. A complex structure of different types of fear, each operating at different depths of consciousness, each triggered by different circumstances, and each requiring a different approach to navigate. Understanding this architecture with precision is the first step to navigating it effectively. The walls of the fear architecture include the fear of failure, the fear of success, the fear of judgment, the fear of vulnerability, the fear of visibility, the fear of inadequacy, and the fear of irreversibility. Each of these is distinct in its mechanism and its manifestation. Each produces different behavioral patterns and different types of avoidance. And each, once clearly mapped, becomes significantly more navigable than when it was invisible and undifferentiated. The fear of failure. The fear of failure is the most commonly identified growth barrier, and also the most deeply misunderstood. Most people believe they fear failure because of what failure itself would feel like. But research on achievement behavior consistently reveals a more complex picture. The primary driver of failure avoidance is not the experience of failure. It is the interpretation of failure as evidence about identity. When failure is interpreted as information, as data about what did not work in a specific attempt under specific conditions, it is manageable and even useful. High performers in competitive fields typically have a relationship with failure that is more closely aligned with curiosity than with shame. When failure is interpreted as a verdict on who you are, as evidence of your fundamental inadequacy, it becomes psychologically catastrophic. And the anticipation of that psychological catastrophe is what produces avoidance. The reframe that neutralizes the fear of failure is therefore not the denial of failure's pain. It is the separation of failure from identity. The deliberate cognitive practice of evaluating a failed attempt in terms of what it reveals about strategy, timing, resources, or approach, rather than what it proves about the person who attempted it. This reframe does not make failure pleasant, but it makes it survivable. And survivable failure is not an obstacle. It is the curriculum. The fear of success. The fear of success is less discussed than the fear of failure, but in many cases it is far more operationally significant. Because while people can readily identify fear of failure as a legitimate concern, fear of success sounds paradoxical, even absurd. Who could possibly fear what they most want? The answer lies in the concept of secondary consequences. Success in any significant domain rarely arrives alone. It arrives with increased visibility, increased expectations, increased responsibility, and the increased possibility of having more to lose. A person who has unconsciously associated success with isolation, with the envy of others, with the burden of expectation, or with the loss of an identity they have relied on, will sabotage success as reliably as they would consciously avoid a known danger. The fear of success is particularly common among people who grew up in environments where high achievement was met with suspicion, resentment, or the withdrawal of belonging. When success and connection were linked in inverse proportion during formative years, the unconscious mind learns that exceeding the group is a threat to belonging. And for social animals like humans, threats to belonging are existential. The sabotage of success in that context is not irrational. It is the brain protecting something it values even more deeply than achievement. The fear of judgment. The fear of judgment is the social dimension of the ceiling, and it is one of the most pervasive barriers to action in the modern world. Because modern life has unprecedented visibility. Social media, online presence, and digital documentation mean that more of what you do, say, create, and attempt is observable by more people than at any previous point in human history. And the expanded visibility amplifies the stakes of judgment in a way that the brain was not designed to manage. The fear of judgment produces a specific behavioral signature, the preparation that never ends. The project that is perpetually almost ready. The business plan that requires one more revision. The conversation that will happen when the time is right. These are not failures of ambition or intelligence. They are sophisticated avoidance behaviors driven by the brain's calculation that the risk of being seen and found wanting is greater than the cost of remaining invisible. The corrective insight is that judgment is not actually as dangerous as the threat system insists. Research on the social consequences of public attempts, even failed ones, consistently reveals that observers evaluate courage and effort far more generously than the fear of judgment predicts. The gap between imagined judgment and actual judgment is enormous, and it lies almost entirely on the side of the imagined being worse. The brain systematically overestimates the social cost of visibility, and exposure to the actual outcome is the most reliable corrective. The fear of vulnerability and the fear of irreversibility. The fear of vulnerability is the recognition that genuine engagement with anything that matters requires openness to being hurt. To care deeply enough about an outcome that its failure would genuinely cost you something. Many people have resolved this fear by a strategy of strategic detachment. They pursue goals while maintaining an internal reservation, a private conviction that they were not really trying, that the attempt was provisional, that the commitment was not absolute. This detachment protects against the full experience of failure, but it also prevents the full experience of success. Because genuine achievement requires the kind of total engagement that vulnerability avoidance prevents. The fear of irreversibility is the anxiety about making decisions that cannot be undone. It manifests as an endless search for the option that preserves all other options, the choice that can be revoked, the commitment that has an exit strategy built in. This fear is particularly potent in major life decisions, because the brain correctly perceives that some choices close other doors. What the fear misses is that indecision also closes doors, just more slowly and less visibly. The cost of never fully committing to a path is just as real as the cost of choosing the wrong path. It is simply harder to see. Chapter summary. Fear in the context of growth is not a single force but an architecture of distinct fears, each requiring specific navigation. The fear of failure is most powerfully addressed by separating failure from identity, treating it as information rather than verdict. The fear of success operates through secondary consequences, the unconscious anticipation of the costs that come with achievement. The fear of judgment systematically overestimates the social cost of visibility, a bias most correctable through actual exposure. The fear of vulnerability prevents the total engagement that genuine achievement requires, while the fear of irreversibility makes all commitment feel disproportionately costly. Mapping the specific fear at play in any avoidance behavior is the first step to addressing it directly and effectively. Practical lessons and exercises. 1. Identify one goal or project you have been avoiding and name the specific fear underneath the avoidance. Is it a failure? Success? Judgment? Vulnerability? Irreversibility? The naming precision matters because each fear requires a different response. Generic courage is not a strategy. Specific navigation of a specific fear is. 2. For the fear of judgment specifically, identify one thing you have been refraining from doing or saying publicly because of concern about how it would be received. This week, do or say it in the smallest possible public context. Then observe the actual response versus the anticipated response. Document the discrepancy. 3. Write a letter to yourself from the perspective of a mentor who knows you well and sees your fear architecture clearly but without judgment. What would that mentor say about the specific fears that are currently limiting you? What would they encourage you to do first? This exercise gives you access to a perspective that is simultaneously intimate and external. 4. Research one person in your field whose work you respect and who has clearly operated through significant fear in building what they have built. Look for their public accounts of their fear experience. The normalization of fear in the experience of high performers is one of the most therapeutically useful discoveries available. In Chapter 6, we turn to the imposter engine, one of the most widespread and most underestimated dimensions of the invisible ceiling. Chapter 6, The Imposter Engine, How Self-Doubt Becomes a Self-Fulfilling Mechanism. The phenomenon that afflicts the most capable. In 1978, psychologists Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes published a paper describing a phenomenon they observed with striking frequency in their high-achieving clients. These were accomplished professionals, academics, and executives who, despite clear evidence of their competence and success, secretly believed that they had somehow fooled everyone around them. That their achievements were the result of luck, timing, or the gullibility of others rather than genuine capability. That it was only a matter of time before they were exposed. Clance and Imes called this the imposter phenomenon. In the decades since that initial paper, it has been studied extensively, and the findings are both consistent and striking. The imposter experience is not rare. It is not limited to people with low objective capability. In fact, the research suggests the opposite. Imposter syndrome is most prevalent among precisely the people who are most capable. High achievers. Leaders. Creators. People who are pushing into new territory and facing genuine complexity. This finding is important because it reframes the nature of imposter syndrome entirely. It is not evidence of inadequacy. It is almost universally the signature of someone who takes their work seriously enough to recognize the gap between where they are and where they aspire to be. The person who feels no imposter syndrome is typically either genuinely expert in a fully understood domain or lacks the metacognitive awareness to recognize the limits of their knowledge. Neither of these is the condition of someone reaching for something new. How the imposter engine works. The imposter engine is not a passive feeling. It is an active mechanism that generates specific behaviors, each of which tends to confirm and deepen the original self-doubt. It operates in a cycle that, without intervention, becomes increasingly self-reinforcing. The cycle begins with an achievement or opportunity that exceeds your current sense of deserving. Your identity says you are not ready or not worthy. This gap triggers the imposter feeling, the sense that you have been mistakenly elevated, that you do not belong in the position you occupy, that you are operating above your actual level. The feeling is uncomfortable, and the brain seeks to resolve it in one of two directions. The first direction is overcorrection. You work excessively hard to compensate for the perceived inadequacy, preparing far more than the situation objectively requires, performing with a level of effort that is unsustainable, and living in a state of constant anxiety about the moment when the inadequacy will be revealed. The overcorrection delivers good results in the short term, which paradoxically confirms the imposter feeling rather than relieving it. You attribute the success to the extraordinary effort rather than to genuine capability, which means the next challenge requires the same extraordinary effort and produces the same exhausting anxiety. The second direction is avoidance. Rather than overcorrecting, the imposter feeling drives withdrawal from opportunities that might expose the perceived inadequacy. You decline invitations, undersell your capabilities, avoid situations where your limitations might be visible, and generally keep your head below the parapet of full engagement. This avoidance prevents the exposure you fear, but it also prevents the experiences that would provide evidence against the imposter narrative. The attribution error at the heart of imposter syndrome. The cognitive mechanism that drives imposter syndrome is a specific and consistent attribution error. When something goes well, the imposter mind attributes the outcome to external factors, luck, other people's generosity, favorable circumstances, or the extraordinary effort of the previous paragraph. When something goes poorly, the imposter mind attributes the outcome to internal factors, inadequacy, lack of real talent, confirmation of the underlying insufficiency. This asymmetric attribution pattern means that no amount of success can build genuine confidence, because success is never attributed to the self. The evidence is always explained away, contextualized, or discounted. Meanwhile, every setback is absorbed into the identity as further proof of what the imposter mind already believed. The result is a confidence account that can only be depleted, never filled, regardless of the objective quality of the outcomes being produced. Breaking the imposter engine requires challenging this attribution pattern directly and deliberately. It requires building the practice of taking accurate credit for genuine achievement. Not inflated credit. Accurate credit. The practice of saying that worked because of what I did, what I prepared, what I understood, and what I executed, is not arrogance. It is the honest accounting that accurate confidence requires. Separating competence from confidence. One of the most liberating insights about imposter syndrome is the recognition that competence and confidence are not the same thing and do not develop at the same rate. Competence is the actual capability to perform well in a given domain. Confidence is the accurate belief in that capability. Many people are significantly more competent than they are confident, because the evidence of competence has been systematically filtered through the attribution error described above. This gap between competence and confidence is both the source of the imposter experience and the beginning of its resolution. If you are genuinely competent in an area and experiencing significant imposter feelings, the question is not how to become more capable. It is how to build an accurate accounting of the capability you already have. The solution is not more performance. It is a better attribution. Chapter summary. Imposter syndrome is most prevalent among capable, high-achieving individuals who take their work seriously enough to recognize the gap between current reality and aspiration. It operates as a self-reinforcing cycle driven by a systematic attribution error. Success is attributed to external factors while failure is attributed to internal inadequacy. The two primary behavioral responses, overcorrection and avoidance, each perpetuate the cycle rather than resolving it. Competence and confidence are distinct and do not develop at the same rate. The resolution of imposter syndrome requires challenging the attribution pattern directly and building the practice of accurate, honest self-credit that allows the confidence account to fill in proportion to genuine achievement. Practical lessons and exercises. 1. Keep a win log for the next 30 days. Every day, write down one specific thing that went well and identify one genuine contribution you made to that outcome. Not luck. Not circumstances. Your specific action, preparation, or judgment. Over 30 days, this practice begins to rewire the attribution pattern. 2. The next time you attribute a success to luck or circumstances, pause and ask a follow-up question. What did I do that made it more likely for that luck or circumstance to produce a good outcome? Luck finds the prepared. What was your preparation? This question redirects attribution without denying external factors. 3. Identify one area where you have been underselling your capabilities and commit to one act of accurate self-representation this week. Not inflation. Accuracy. Stating what you actually know, have done, or can offer without the habitual discount. Notice how it feels. The discomfort is the imposter engine resisting the correction. 4. Find a community of peers operating at a level you aspire to and engage genuinely. Observe them closely. What you will almost invariably discover is that they experience versions of the same doubts you do. Normalization of the imposter experience within a community of capable people is one of the most reliable antidotes to its isolating and paralyzing effects. In Chapter 7, we decode the procrastination code, understanding exactly why you delay the things that matter most and how to permanently interrupt the pattern. Chapter 7, The Procrastination Code, Why You Delay the Things That Matter Most. The misdiagnosis of procrastination. Procrastination is almost universally misdiagnosed. It is treated as a time management problem, a productivity problem, a discipline problem, or a character problem. The solutions that flow from these diagnoses are correspondingly superficial: better schedules, accountability systems, motivational content, stricter self-discipline. And the consistent experience of people who try these solutions is that they work temporarily and then stop working, because they are addressing the symptom while leaving the actual cause entirely undisturbed. Procrastination is not a time management problem. Research published in the past decade has established with increasing clarity that procrastination is an emotion regulation problem. Specifically, it is the brain's strategy for avoiding negative emotional states associated with a task. When beginning or engaging with a task produces anticipatory anxiety, self-doubt, frustration, boredom, or any other form of emotional discomfort, the brain generates avoidance behavior. Not because you are lazy. Because you are human. This reframe has radical practical implications. If procrastination is about emotional avoidance rather than poor time management, then the solution must address the emotional experience of the task rather than the scheduling of it. And the task that generates the most procrastination is almost never the unimportant or uninteresting one. It is the one that matters most. The one where the stakes are highest, where the fear of inadequacy is most activated, and where the gap between aspiration and current capability feels most threatening. The anatomy of a procrastination episode. A procrastination episode has a predictable structure that, once you can recognize it in real time, becomes significantly easier to interrupt. It begins with a trigger, the moment of contact with the task that has been avoided. This might be opening the document, sitting down at the workstation, looking at the blank page, or simply thinking about the thing that needs doing. The trigger activates the emotional discomfort associated with the task, whether that is anxiety about the outcome, uncertainty about how to proceed, or a felt sense of inadequacy relative to the task's demands. The emotional discomfort is brief but intense. And in response to it, the brain offers a solution: displacement activity. Something that feels like productive action but is not the avoided task. Email checking, research that expands indefinitely, organizational tasks, social media, physical tidying. These activities provide the neurochemical reward of task completion while avoiding the emotional cost of the actual task. The relief is immediate. The cost is paid later. The cost is not just the time lost to the displacement activity. It is the increasing psychological weight that builds around the avoided task with every delay. Each time you avoid a task, the aversion to it grows. The anticipatory discomfort of beginning increases. The gap between where you are and where the task requires you to be feels larger. Procrastination is exactly like interest on debt. Every delay makes the eventual beginning more difficult. High-stakes procrastination and the ceiling. The connection between procrastination and the invisible ceiling is direct. The tasks that are most reliably procrastinated are the ones that represent genuine breakthrough potential. The manuscript that would establish you as a credible voice. The business plan that would require you to operate at a completely different level. The conversation that would change the trajectory of an important relationship. The application, the proposal, the commitment that would close off comfortable options and require real investment. These tasks are avoided most persistently precisely because they matter most. Because the stakes are real. Because doing them well and still failing would be genuinely painful. Because doing them poorly would provide the evidence your imposter mind has been anticipating. The ceiling is not maintained by avoiding unimportant things. It is maintained by avoiding the few things that are genuinely important enough to threaten it. Understanding this specificity is enormously useful. If you can identify the tasks in your life that you procrastinate on most consistently, you are not looking at a list of tasks where you lack discipline. You are looking at a map of your ceiling. You are seeing, in behavioral form, the precise contours of the boundaries your identity and your fear architecture have drawn around your potential. Interrupting the pattern. The interruption of chronic procrastination does not begin with discipline. It begins with reduction. Specifically, the deliberate reduction of the emotional stakes of beginning. The most effective technique for interrupting procrastination is what researchers call implementation intentions combined with minimal commitment. Instead of committing to completing a task, you commit to starting it for the smallest possible duration. 2 minutes. 5 minutes. 1 sentence. 1 sketch. 1 line of code. This approach works because the emotional aversion that generates procrastination is concentrated in the anticipation of beginning, not in the experience of doing. Once engagement begins, the emotional state often shifts rapidly. The anticipated discomfort proves less severe than imagined. The task begins to generate its own momentum. The neurochemical experience of actually working on something important is often, once initiated, more rewarding than the displacement activities that preceded it. Pairing minimal commitment with environmental design amplifies the effect. Removing the easy access to displacement activities, creating workspaces that cue engagement rather than avoidance, and establishing routines that carry you automatically into the beginning of important work all reduce the friction. At the point of beginning where procrastination is most powerful. Chapter summary. Procrastination is an emotion regulation strategy rather than a time management failure. It is the brain's avoidance of the negative emotional states anticipated in connection with high-stakes tasks. The tasks that are most chronically procrastinated are typically the most important ones, making a procrastination map a direct guide to the ceiling. The anatomy of a procrastination episode follows a predictable trigger, discomfort, displacement activity sequence, and each repetition of the cycle compounds the aversion. Interrupting the pattern requires addressing the emotional experience of beginning rather than the scheduling of the task, most effectively through minimal commitment strategies that separate the anticipation of engagement from the experience of it. Practical lessons and exercises. 1. List the 3 tasks you have been most consistently avoiding. Next to each one, write the honest emotional reason for the avoidance. Not the practical reason. The emotional one. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, uncertainty about how to proceed, anxiety about the scope. This emotional audit is the foundation of any effective interruption strategy. 2. Implement the 2-minute rule this week for your most avoided task. Commit only to 2 minutes of engagement. Set a timer. Begin. When the 2 minutes are up, you have permission to stop. Notice whether you actually stop or continue. The results of this experiment will teach you something important about the gap between anticipated and actual discomfort. 3. Design your environment to reduce displacement activity access during the first 30 minutes of your workday. Remove or block the specific applications and activities that most frequently serve as your procrastination vehicles. The goal is not permanent restriction. It is creating a protected window of reduced friction at the beginning of the day when important work most needs to happen. 4. Track your procrastination episodes for 1 week. Note the time, the task avoided, the displacement activity chosen, and the emotional state at the moment of avoidance. Patterns will emerge within 3 to 4 days that reveal the specific emotional triggers most reliably driving your avoidance. Those triggers are what your intervention needs to address. Chapter 8 explores the visibility trap, the counterintuitive discovery that success itself becomes the next ceiling, and why so many people unconsciously sabotage their most significant achievements. Chapter 8, The Visibility Trap, Why Success Itself Becomes the Next Ceiling. When success becomes the problem. There is a pattern that strikes many people as paradoxical until they understand the mechanism behind it, the pattern of people who achieve a significant breakthrough only to find themselves pulling back, slowing down, or self-sabotaging just as the next level of success is becoming visible. People who build something genuinely impressive and then inexplicably stop investing in it. People who receive recognition they have sought for years and then find a way to discount it or withdraw from the environment that produced it. People who finally reach the professional level they have been working toward and immediately begin behaving in ways that threaten their position there. This is the visibility trap. And it is not a character flaw. It is the next manifestation of the invisible ceiling, the ceiling that rises with each breakthrough to claim a new position just above wherever you have arrived. The visibility trap operates through a specific mechanism, the expansion of exposure that comes with success. When you achieve at a higher level, more people know about you. More people are watching your next move. More people have expectations of you. More people can potentially be disappointed by you. The stakes of public performance have increased. And the brain, which monitors exposure and visibility with evolutionary precision, responds to this increase exactly as it would respond to any expansion of social vulnerability, with threat response and corrective avoidance. The new expectations problem. One of the most concrete expressions of the visibility trap is the new expectations problem. When you produce exceptional work, the benchmark for your next attempt is automatically elevated. Where before you could produce good work and receive appreciation, you are now expected to produce exceptional work consistently. The tolerance for average has been reduced. And the gap between your current reliable capability and the new expected level of performance becomes a source of significant anxiety. This dynamic is particularly acute for public creators, entrepreneurs, and leaders whose output is visible and comparative. The writer whose first book was acclaimed faces the terror of the second. The entrepreneur whose first venture succeeded faces the expectation that the second will also succeed. The leader who handled one crisis well is expected to handle every subsequent crisis with the same apparent ease. Each previous success raises the floor of expectation and makes the next attempt feel more perilous. The natural response to this pressure is to slow the pace of production, to increase the perfectionism that gates each output, or to shift towards safer, more predictable work that is less likely to fall short of elevated expectations. Each of these responses reduces the risk of visible failure, but each also reduces the probability of the next breakthrough, because breakthroughs require the willingness to attempt work that might not succeed. Social comparison and the relativity of success. Success does not exist in a vacuum. It exists in a social context where it is always evaluated relative to a reference group. When you were operating at a lower level, your reference group consisted of people at or near your level, and achievement was relatively easy to recognize and feel. When you achieve a breakthrough and begin operating at a higher level, your reference group automatically updates to include people at the new level. And at that new level, your achievement suddenly looks less exceptional. This relativity effect is one of the most psychologically disorienting aspects of achievement. You work for years to reach a level that feels significant. You reach it. And you find that from inside it does not feel as significant as you anticipated, because the people around you at that level achieved the same thing you did. And many of them have achieved considerably more. The breakthrough that looked like an arrival turns out to be another beginning. And beginnings, at every level, feel like starting from inadequacy. Managing this experience requires a specific mindset shift, from the pursuit of a destination to the embrace of a trajectory. The goal is not to arrive somewhere that finally feels like enough. The goal is to sustain the motion of growth, to remain in trajectory rather than destination, and to measure progress against your own previous positions rather than against the achievements of others at the new level. Sustaining momentum after the breakthrough. The key to avoiding the visibility trap is building deliberate structures that protect momentum at the exact moment when the natural tendency is to slow or stop. These structures include maintaining the behaviors and disciplines that produce the breakthrough rather than abandoning them as rewards for having achieved. They include building support systems of peers and advisors who understand the specific pressures of operating at the new level and can normalize the experience. And they include developing an explicit framework for managing the new expectations problem by distinguishing between the pressure that motivates and the pressure that paralyzes. Most importantly, avoiding the visibility trap requires recognizing it as it arrives. The moment after a significant achievement, when the momentum is highest and the temptation to coast is strongest, is precisely when the next ceiling is setting itself. Recognizing that moment, naming it, and choosing deliberately to keep building rather than to consolidate indefinitely is the act of agency that separates people who have one breakthrough from people who have a career of breakthroughs. Chapter Summary. The visibility trap is the phenomenon through which success becomes the trigger for the next ceiling, because expanded achievement produces expanded exposure. Elevated expectations, and an updated reference group that makes the new level feel less exceptional than it looked from outside. The new expectations problem causes many high achievers to slow output or increase perfectionism precisely when sustained momentum is most valuable. Social comparison at the new level disorients by making achievement feel less significant just as it is being realized. Sustaining momentum requires deliberate structural support, explicit frameworks for managing new pressures, and the cultivated ability to recognize and name the moment when the ceiling is setting itself so that the choice to keep building can be made with full awareness. Practical lessons and exercises. 1. Identify one significant achievement in your past that was followed by a period of retreat, slowdown, or self-sabotage. Map the specific behaviors that constituted the pullback. When in the timeline relative to the achievement did they begin? What triggered them? You are examining a completed visibility trap, and the pattern it reveals will recur if you do not have a framework for it. 2. For any significant goal you are currently working toward, write out explicitly what the visibility trap might look like when you achieve it. What new expectations will it create? What new pressures will accompany the expanded success? What behaviors might you be tempted toward that would represent a retreat from the new level? Having this map in advance is the most reliable way to recognize and interrupt the pattern when it arrives. 3. Build a progress measurement system that tracks your trajectory relative to your own previous positions rather than relative to external benchmarks. The habit of measuring forward movement against your own baseline is one of the most powerful protections against the relativity effect that makes achievement at each new level feel inadequate. 4. Identify one person who has sustained growth across multiple breakthroughs in a domain you care about. Study their output history. What does the pattern of their production reveal about how they managed the visibility trap? The deliberate examination of sustained careers provides models that are more useful than any amount of abstract encouragement. In Chapter 9, we move into emotional regulation as a performance technology, one of the most underutilized and most powerful tools in the Breakthrough Builder's toolkit. Chapter 9. Emotional Regulation as a Performance Technology. The emotion-performance connection. For most of human history, the relationship between emotion and performance was understood in primarily adversarial terms. Emotion was seen as the enemy of clear thinking, rational decision-making, and effective action. The ideal performer was the controlled one, the person who could suppress emotional response and operate from pure reason. This model produced entire professional cultures that pathologized emotional expression and rewarded emotional numbness as a form of strength. The science of the past 3 decades has thoroughly dismantled this model. Research in neuroscience, organizational psychology, and performance science has established that emotion and cognition are not separate systems that compete for control. They are integrated systems that always operate together. The question is not whether emotion will influence performance. It always will. The question is whether that influence will be managed intelligently or not. Emotional regulation is not the suppression of emotion. It is the deliberate management of emotional states in service of intended action. It is the capacity to recognize your emotional state with accuracy, to understand how that state is influencing your processing and behavior, and to make adjustments that align your emotional resources with the demands of the moment. This capacity is learnable, trainable, and more consequential for performance at the highest levels than almost any technical skill. The regulatory gap. The regulatory gap is the distance between your current emotional state and the emotional state that would most effectively support the action you intend to take. Managing this gap, reducing it when possible and navigating it skillfully when reduction is not immediately possible, is the practical work of emotional regulation as a performance tool. The gap has a specific profile that is worth understanding in relation to the invisible ceiling. The actions that are most important for breaking through the ceiling, the ones that require courage, creativity, sustained focus, and the willingness to operate in uncertain territory, require emotional states characterized by moderate arousal, open attention, and what psychologists call psychological safety, the felt sense that it is acceptable to attempt, to fail, and to learn. The ceiling itself, by contrast, consistently generates emotional states characterized by high stress arousal, narrowed attention, heightened threat sensitivity, and a felt sense of everything being at stake. These states are the antithesis of the conditions that support breakthroughs. Which means that emotional regulation is not just a nice-to-have for high performers. It is a prerequisite for the specific type of performance that ceiling breaking requires. The Toolkit of Emotional Regulation. The science of emotional regulation has identified a range of strategies that vary in their effectiveness, their speed of action, and their applicability across different contexts. Understanding the toolkit and developing facilities with multiple strategies is more effective than relying on any single approach. The most immediate and physiologically direct strategies involve deliberate modulation of breathing and body state. The physiological stress response that the ceiling triggers is accompanied by specific patterns of breathing, heart rate, and muscle tension. These patterns are not just symptoms of the emotional state. They are contributors to it. Deliberate slow breathing with an extended exhale activates the parasympathetic nervous system, reducing cortisol and adrenaline levels and shifting the physiological state toward one more conducive to clear thinking and intentional action. This is not mystical. It is mechanical, and it is among the fastest and most reliable emotional regulation tools available. Cognitive reappraisal is a slower but deeper regulatory strategy that involves changing the interpretation of the situation that is generating the emotional response. Rather than changing the situation itself, you change the story about what it means. The nervous presentation becomes an opportunity to demonstrate what you know. The difficult conversation becomes a chance to build a more honest relationship. The financial risk becomes an investment in a future that you have chosen. Research on reappraisal consistently shows it to be one of the most effective and durable emotional regulation strategies, with benefits that extend well beyond the immediate moment. Situational modification, when possible, involves changing the actual environment or circumstances to reduce the emotional activation before it peaks. Preparing more thoroughly before a high-stakes event. Seeking social support before a difficult action. Creating conditions that provide psychological safety before attempting something that feels threatening. These preemptive strategies require more planning but produce cleaner emotional conditions for breakthrough action. Emotional regulation and the ceiling. The most powerful application of emotional regulation in the context of the invisible ceiling is the development of what might be called a breakthrough emotional protocol, a personalized sequence of regulation strategies that you apply deliberately in the moments when the ceiling's resistance is most active. Not hoping to feel better. Not waiting for motivation. Deliberately creating the emotional conditions that make the intended action more likely to occur. This protocol is individual because the specific emotional barriers and the most effective regulatory responses vary by person. But the structure is universal. Recognize the emotional state that the ceiling is generating, apply the specific regulatory strategy most effective for that state, and act from the adjusted state rather than waiting for the emotional conditions to be perfect. Perfect emotional conditions are a variant of the preparation excuse. Adequate emotional conditions, deliberately cultivated, are sufficient for breakthrough. Chapter summary. Emotional regulation is not the suppression of emotion but the deliberate management of emotional states in service of intended action. Emotion and cognition are integrated systems, and the question is never whether emotion influences performance but how that influence is managed. The regulatory gap is the distance between your current emotional state and the state that would best support breakthrough action. The ceiling consistently generates high-stress emotional states that are incompatible with the openness, creativity, and psychological safety that breakthrough requires. The regulatory toolkit includes physiological interventions such as deliberate breathing, cognitive reappraisal, and situational modification. The most powerful application is developing a personalized breakthrough emotional protocol that can be deployed deliberately in the moments when the ceiling's resistance is strongest. Practical lessons and exercises. 1. Practice physiological regulation this week. Choose one specific breathing pattern, such as inhaling for 4 counts, holding for 4 counts, and exhaling for 8 counts, and practice it deliberately for 5 minutes each morning. Also apply it for 2 minutes before any high-stakes interaction or decision this week. Track the difference in your cognitive and behavioral experience. 2. Identify one recurring situation in which the ceiling generates a predictable negative emotional state. Write out a specific reappraisal for that situation, a genuine alternative interpretation of what that situation means, one that is honest rather than falsely positive but that opens rather than closes your response repertoire. Practice the reappraisal until it becomes accessible automatically. 3. Design your pre-performance environment more intentionally. For the most important action you take each week, identify one environmental or circumstantial change you could make that would reduce the emotional activation before you begin. Implement it this week and note the effect on your engagement with the task. 4. Begin building your breakthrough emotional protocol. Write a personalized sequence of 3 steps you will apply the next time you feel the ceiling's resistance activating. Make each step specific, concrete, and doable in under 2 minutes. Having a protocol ready before you need it transforms a crisis into a familiar procedure. Now we arrive at the chapter that ties everything together. Chapter 10 presents the reprogramming protocol, the systematic approach to rewriting the architecture that has been holding the ceiling in place. Chapter 10, the reprogramming protocol, rewriting the architecture of your mind. Why insight alone is never enough. By this point in the audiobook, you have a comprehensive map of the invisible ceiling. You understand its neurological foundations, its psychological architecture, its behavioral manifestations, and its self-reinforcing mechanisms. This understanding is genuinely valuable. But it is not sufficient. And the reason it is not sufficient is the same reason that knowing about the caloric content of food does not make it easy to change your diet, or knowing that sleep deprivation reduces cognitive performance does not make it easy to go to bed earlier. Insight is the beginning of change. It is not the change itself. The architecture of the invisible ceiling was not built through insight. It was built through experience. Through repeated patterns of behavior, reinforced by emotional responses, confirmed by outcomes, and encoded as neural pathways over months and years. Changing this architecture requires the same mechanism that built it, experience. Specifically, new, repeated, emotionally meaningful experiences of operating differently. The reprogramming protocol is the structured approach to creating those experiences deliberately, systematically, and in a sequence that builds on itself to produce permanent architectural change. It is not a collection of tips. It is a coherent system designed to address the ceiling at every level of its architecture simultaneously, because changes at one level without corresponding changes at the others tend to be temporary. The 4 levels of reprogramming. The reprogramming protocol operates across 4 distinct levels, each of which addresses a different dimension of the ceiling's architecture. These levels are belief, identity, behavior, and environment. Change that is sustained over time requires deliberate work at all 4 levels, because the ceiling is held in place by all 4 simultaneously. At the belief level, reprogramming involves the systematic examination and replacement of the specific beliefs that constitute the ceiling. Not affirmations layered over unchanged beliefs, but genuine interrogation of the evidence for the limiting belief, the active search for counter-evidence, and the deliberate construction of new beliefs on the basis of that counter-evidence. This is cognitive work. It is sometimes uncomfortable and it takes time. But it produces changes that go deeper than any behavioral intervention alone. At the identity level, reprogramming involves the deliberate construction of a new self-concept that is consistent with the life you are building rather than the life you have already lived. This is the work of the identity journal, the deliberate adoption of the language, practices, and community associations of the person you are becoming, and the consistent practice of acting in alignment with the new identity even when the old one pulls back. At the behavioral level, reprogramming involves the systematic practice of new behaviors that are inconsistent with the ceiling. Not dramatic gestures, but small, consistent, repeatable actions that build new neural pathways through repetition. The behavioral practice is not the end point. It is the mechanism through which the belief and identity changes become physically encoded in the brain. At the environmental level, reprogramming involves redesigning the physical, social, and informational environment to support the new architecture rather than the old one. Choosing communities that normalize the new ceiling level. Eliminating or reducing exposure to inputs that reinforce the old beliefs. Creating physical environments that cue the new behaviors and make the old avoidance patterns less accessible. The reprogramming sequence. The protocol is most effective when the 4 levels are addressed in a specific sequence that respects the dependencies between them. You begin at the belief level, because beliefs determine what changes at other levels are even conceivable. Without a genuine shift in what you believe is possible for you, new identity, new behaviors, and new environments feel fake and unsustainable. From beliefs, you move to identity. Once you have evidence, however modest, against the limiting belief, you can begin to construct a new identity narrative that is consistent with that evidence. The new narrative does not need to be fully realized. It needs to be plausible. Plausible is enough to begin acting from. From identity, you move to behavior. You begin taking the specific actions that the new identity would take. Not perfectly. Not consistently from the start. But with intention and with a tolerance for imperfection that the old identity would not have permitted. Each behavioral success provides new evidence for the new belief and strengthens the new identity. From behavior, you design the environment. Once you know what the new behaviors are and have begun practicing them, you design your environment to make them easier and make the old patterns harder. The environment is the most powerful long-term maintenance mechanism, because it keeps working even when motivation fluctuates and willpower is low. The compound effect of reprogramming. The most important thing to understand about the reprogramming protocol is that its effects are not linear. In the early stages, change is slow and often imperceptible. The work feels effortful. The old patterns reassert themselves. The ceiling seems as solid as ever. This is the phase when most reprogramming attempts are abandoned. And it is the phase that is most critical to survive with commitment intact. Because the reprogramming process follows the same compound curve as all other forms of growth. The early investment produces small returns. The later investment, building on the foundation of the earlier work, produces returns that are disproportionately large. The person who committed to the protocol and maintained it through the slow early phase does not experience a linear improvement. They experience a threshold, the moment when the new architecture is sufficiently established that it becomes self-sustaining. When the new beliefs feel more natural than the old ones. When the new identity is more familiar than the old one. When the new behaviors are habits rather than efforts. That is the breakthrough. And that is everything. Chapter summary. Insight about the ceiling is necessary but not sufficient for changing it. The ceiling was built through repeated experience and must be rebuilt the same way. The reprogramming protocol addresses the ceiling at 4 levels: belief, identity, behavior, and environment, each of which contributes to maintaining the ceiling and must be engaged for change to be durable. The sequence of the protocol moves from belief examination through identity reconstruction to behavioral practice to environmental design, with each level building on the previous one. The compound effect of reprogramming means that early results are slow and the temptation to abandon the process is greatest precisely before the threshold of self-sustaining change is reached. Practical lessons and exercises. 1. Choose one specific limiting belief that you have identified through the exercises in previous chapters. This week, engage in what psychologists call belief disputation. Write out the evidence for the belief, then actively search for counter-evidence. What specific experiences or facts challenge the belief? What would a neutral observer with full information conclude? Build the countercase with the same rigor you would apply to any important argument. 2. Write your new identity statement. A specific, present-tense description of the person you are becoming, grounded in the counter-evidence from the belief disputation. Read this statement aloud every morning for 30 days. The repetition is not optional. It is the mechanism. 3. Identify the 3 behaviors most consistent with your new identity and most inconsistent with your old ceiling. Commit to practicing each one at least once this week. Accept imperfect execution. The practice matters more than the performance at this stage. 4. Audit your environment against the new identity this week. What in your current environment reinforces the old ceiling? What could you change to support the new architecture? Choose one environmental change to implement this week. Start small. Environmental design compounds over time. Chapter 11 is where we translate all of this into irreversible action. The breakthrough execution chapter is where insight and reprogramming meet the actual moment of forward movement. Chapter 11, The Breakthrough Execution, Translating Insight into Irreversible Action. The last mile problem. There is a phenomenon that anyone who has worked seriously with individuals pursuing personal or professional transformation will recognize immediately. The person who has done everything right. Who has developed genuine insight about their patterns. Who has engaged earnestly with the work of identity change. Who understands the ceiling with a clarity that exceeds most people who have studied these topics. And who, nonetheless, has not taken the specific, concrete, irreversible action that would move them from understanding to transformation. This is the last mile problem. The gap between knowing and doing. Between insight and execution. Between preparation and beginning. It is the final and most consequential manifestation of the invisible ceiling, and it deserves its own chapter because it is where the largest proportion of growth intentions go to die. The last mile problem persists even after significant reprogramming work because the moment of actual action, the moment of genuine commitment, is uniquely threatening to the identity in ways that all the preparatory work never quite replicates. Preparation is safe. Even understanding is safe. Action is irreversible. And irreversibility, as we examined in the Fear Architecture chapter, is one of the most powerful triggers for avoidance. Because once you have truly acted, truly begun, truly committed, you can no longer maintain the comfortable fiction that you are about to do the thing rather than the uncomfortable reality that you either did it or did not. The anatomy of a breakthrough moment. A breakthrough moment is not a spontaneous occurrence. It is a manufactured one. High performers across domains consistently report that their significant breakthroughs were the result of deliberate design rather than accidental inspiration. They created specific conditions that made the action more likely, reduced the friction at the moment of beginning. and built-in accountability structures that made not acting more costly than acting. The anatomy of a deliberate breakthrough moment has several components. The first is a specific and concrete definition of the action itself. Not the goal, not the vision, not the aspiration, but the precise, physically observable action that constitutes the beginning. For a writer, it is not becoming an author. It is opening the document and writing the first sentence. For an entrepreneur, it is not building a company. It is making the first customer call. For the person avoiding a difficult conversation, it is not resolving the relationship. It is sending the message requesting the meeting. The second component is a specific time and place where the action will occur. Research on implementation intentions consistently demonstrates that people who specify when and where they will take an intended action are dramatically more likely to follow through than people who hold the intention without specifying these parameters. The specificity is not bureaucratic. It is the mechanism. The third component is the removal of alternatives. In the moment before the action, the brain will offer alternatives. It will generate reasons, concerns, questions that feel urgent and reasonable. The most effective protection against these substitutions is having already made a commitment that makes not acting cost something real. A public declaration, a financial commitment, an accountability structure with social consequences. Whatever makes the alternative to acting more costly than acting itself. The power of irreversibility. The fear of irreversibility that the ceiling generates is in fact a resource when understood and deployed deliberately. The same property that makes commitment threatening, its irreversibility, makes it powerful once made. Irreversible action changes your psychological relationship to the goal. Before the action, you are someone who might do the thing. After the action, you are someone who has begun the thing. That identity shift is immediate and real, and it produces a cascade of downstream behavioral changes that are not available to the person who is still in the might phase. This is why burning the boats, the ancient military strategy of eliminating the retreat option for an invading force, has endured as a metaphor for committed action. Not because retreat is always wrong, but because the psychological experience of having no retreat option releases enormous energy and creativity that was previously consumed by managing the retreat possibility. When the only available direction is forward, forward becomes possible in ways it was not before. Making your commitment irreversible does not require dramatic gestures. It requires genuine investment. Financial, social, temporal, or creative investment in the action that makes reversal genuinely costly rather than merely inconvenient. The investment is not wasted even if the direction later needs adjustment. Because the experience of genuine commitment, and the identity that comes with it, is itself a form of progress that does not revert even when plans change. After the first step of a breakthrough action does not complete the breakthrough. It begins. And the period immediately after the first step is the most critical and most often neglected phase of the execution. Because the ceiling reasserts itself quickly. The initial courage that produced the first step does not sustain automatically. The homeostatic pressure to return to the familiar begins operating immediately. And without deliberate structures to sustain momentum, the first step becomes an isolated act rather than the beginning of a trajectory. Sustaining momentum immediately after a breakthrough action requires two things. The first is immediate reinforcement of the identity that the action reflects. Speaking, writing, or otherwise articulating to yourself and ideally to others what the action says about who you are becoming. Not with grandiosity but with genuine recognition. I am the person who began. I am the person who sent that email. I am the person who made that call. These are small assertions of a new identity, and small assertions made immediately after aligned action are among the most powerful identity-forming moments available. The second is the scheduling of the next action before the energy of the first subsides. The window of heightened identity coherence immediately after a breakthrough action is narrow. Using that window to commit to the next specific action, in writing, with a time and place, is the most reliable way to convert a single breakthrough moment into a sustained breakthrough trajectory. Chapter Summary. The last mile problem is the gap between understanding and irreversible action, the final and most consequential manifestation of the ceiling. It persists even after significant reprogramming because the moment of genuine commitment is uniquely threatening due to its irreversibility. A breakthrough moment is manufactured rather than spontaneous, through the specific definition of the action, the time and place of its execution, and the removal of comfortable alternatives through genuine investment and accountability. The fear of irreversibility is transformed into a resource when the commitment is made. Irreversibility releases the energy previously consumed by managing the retreat option. The period immediately after the first step is critical for sustaining momentum, requiring immediate identity reinforcement and the scheduling of the next action before the energy of the breakthrough dissipates. Practical lessons and exercises. 1. Identify the single most important breakthrough action you have been delaying. Define it with precision. What is the exact, observable, physical action that constitutes beginning? Write it down in one sentence. Vague intentions produce no breakthroughs. Precise actions do. 2. Schedule your breakthrough action before you finish this audiobook. Choose a specific time and place within the next 48 hours. Write it down as a calendar entry with a specific duration. If you do not schedule it immediately, the probability of you doing it drops dramatically with each passing hour. 3. Create accountability by telling at least one person about the specific action and the specific time you have committed to it. Choose someone who will actually ask you about it. Social commitment is not a weakness. It is engineering. 4. Immediately after taking your breakthrough action, write 3 sentences in your identity journal describing what that action says about the person you are becoming. Do this before the energy dissipates. Then schedule your next action. This sequence is the engine of sustained breakthrough. We are approaching the end of our journey. Chapter 12 takes us into the territory beyond the breakthrough, exploring how to sustain growth and avoid the patterns that recreate ceilings at every new level. Chapter 12, The New Ceiling, Sustaining Growth After the Breakthrough. The ceiling is not a one-time problem. There is a comforting but inaccurate narrative that circulates in most personal development contexts. It suggests that the breakthrough is the destination. That if you can just overcome your fear, break through your limiting beliefs, and take courageous action, you will emerge on the other side into a state of sustained growth and expanding possibility. The ceiling will have been broken. The obstacle will be behind you. This narrative is inaccurate in a specific and important way. The ceiling does not disappear when you break through it. It relocates. It reasserts itself at the new level, exactly as the homeostatic brain requires. Every level of achievement carries with it a new set of demands, a new set of unfamiliar territories, a new set of identity questions, and a new set of fears. The person who has succeeded once is not immune to the mechanisms this entire audiobook has described. They are simply facing a version of those mechanisms calibrated to their new position. This is not discouraging. It is orienting. Because the person who expects the breakthrough to be the end is perpetually surprised and destabilized by the re-emergence of the ceiling at the next level. While the person who expects the ceiling to reappear and has built the tools to engage it is positioned to keep moving forward indefinitely. Sustainable growth is not the absence of the ceiling. It is the developed capacity to engage and dismantle it repeatedly. The growth identity. The most important long-term protection against the new ceiling is the development of what might be called a growth identity, a self-concept built not around any specific level of achievement but around the ongoing process of growing. The person whose identity is grounded in being a certain type of achiever is threatened by any experience that challenges that achievement level. The person whose identity is grounded in being a continuous learner, a persistent builder, a committed grower, is not threatened by new challenges. New challenges are confirmation of the identity, not threats to it. Building a growth identity requires a deliberate shift in what you measure and celebrate. Instead of celebrating outcomes exclusively, you celebrate the process that produced them. Instead of defining yourself by your current achievements, you define yourself by your current commitments and your current growth edges. Instead of measuring success by arriving somewhere, you measure it by sustaining the motion of becoming. This shift is not the abandonment of ambition. It is the grounding of ambition in a foundation that can sustain it indefinitely. The person who is committed to growing is almost impossible to permanently discourage, because setbacks and challenges are incorporated into the growth narrative rather than threatening it. The person whose identity depends on a specific outcome is vulnerable to every setback that affects that outcome. The growth identity is fundamentally more resilient. Building systems for sustained development. Beyond the growth identity, sustaining progress through successive ceilings requires the deliberate construction of systems and structures that support ongoing development. These are not one-time interventions. They are recurring practices that keep the reprogramming process active and the growth trajectory sustained even when motivation fluctuates and circumstances change. The most consistently effective of these systems is regular structured reflection. A weekly practice of examining your recent actions against your intended identity, noting where alignment was strong and where the old ceiling patterns re-emerged, and recommitting to the specific behaviors and beliefs of the new identity. This practice keeps the reprogramming process active rather than allowing the insights and changes to gradually erode under the pressure of daily life. A second essential system is a deliberately chosen peer group. The social environment is one of the most powerful regulators of behavior and belief because human beings are deeply social in their identity formation and their behavioral norms. A peer group that normalizes growth, that celebrates courage and effort as much as outcome, and that provides both challenge and support creates a social ecology in which the new ceiling level becomes the cultural baseline rather than an outlier. The third system is ongoing exposure to people and ideas that are operating above your current ceiling. Not for the purpose of social comparison and the inadequacy that comparison produces, but for the purpose of normalization. When you regularly encounter people who are doing what you aspire to do and who are clearly human, clearly imperfect, and clearly operating through the same kinds of fears and doubts you experience, the territory above your ceiling stops feeling magical and starts feeling navigable. The infinite game of growth. The most profound reframe available to anyone committed to sustained growth is understanding personal development as an infinite game rather than a finite one. Finite games are played to win. They have defined endpoints, fixed rules, and a clear distinction between winning and losing. Infinite games are played to keep playing. The goal is not to arrive but to sustain the possibility of continued growth indefinitely. The invisible ceiling, in all its manifestations, is a feature of the finite game mindset. It exists because you are playing to arrive somewhere. When you shift to the infinite game, when you make the development process itself the goal rather than any specific outcome of the process, the ceiling changes its relationship to you. Instead of being an obstacle to your destination, it becomes a marker on your trajectory. A waypoint, not a wall. A challenge that is intrinsically interesting rather than existentially threatening. This is the endgame of everything this audiobook has described. Not the permanent elimination of growth challenges, but the development of a relationship with those challenges that makes them generative rather than paralyzing. A relationship grounded in genuine curiosity, in the deep satisfaction of the growth process itself, and in the liberating recognition that the journey has no final destination, only the next edge, and then the one after that. Chapter Summary. The ceiling does not disappear after a breakthrough. It relocates to the new level. Sustainable growth requires building the capacity to engage and dismantle the ceiling repeatedly rather than expecting a single breakthrough to resolve it permanently. The growth identity, grounded in the ongoing process of becoming rather than any specific level of achievement, is the most resilient foundation for sustained development. Building systems for continued development, including regular structured reflection, a growth-normalizing peer group, and deliberate exposure to people operating above the current ceiling, keeps the reprogramming process active. The infinite game reframe transforms the ceiling from an obstacle into a waypoint, making the ongoing encounter with growth challenges intrinsically interesting rather than existentially threatening. Practical lessons and exercises. 1. Write your growth identity statement. Not what you are currently achieving, but what your commitment to growth says about who you are regardless of current outcomes. Keep it specific enough to be meaningful and broad enough to encompass multiple domains. This is the identity that will sustain you through every future ceiling. 2. Design your weekly reflection practice. Allocate 15 to 20 minutes each week to examining your recent actions against your intended identity and growth commitments. Build it into your calendar as a fixed commitment, as immovable as any external obligation. The consistency of the practice matters more than the depth of any single session. 3. Audit your current peer group against the growth identity. Identify the 3 to 5 people whose presence in your life most strongly supports sustained growth, and invest deliberately in those relationships. Also note whether there are relationships that consistently reinforce old ceiling patterns, and consider how much weight you are giving those voices. 4. Identify one person who is operating at the level you are working toward and find a way to observe them directly this month. Not their curated output. Their actual process. Through an event, a community, a course they teach, or a conversation. The normalization of the territory above your ceiling is among the most powerful experiences available for making it navigable. We are almost at the end of our journey together. The conclusion brings everything into a single, clear, actionable perspective. Conclusion: the permission you have been waiting for. You have been waiting for something. Maybe you have not named it clearly. Maybe it feels like confidence or certainty or the right moment or a clearer sign. But underneath all of those descriptions, what you have actually been waiting for is permission. Permission to take seriously what you most want. Permission to believe that you are capable of more than your current life reflects. Permission to step out of the familiar and into the unfamiliar without knowing exactly how the story ends. That permission has always been yours to give. No one else has the authority to grant it. No credential, no endorsement, no perfect set of circumstances, no amount of preparation or reassurance will substitute for the internal decision to begin. The ceiling has always been internal. And so has the key. You now have something you did not have when you started this audiobook, a map. Not a map of the territory above the ceiling, which remains unknown and genuinely exciting, but a map of the ceiling itself. You understand its neurological architecture. You understand how it was built, how it maintains itself, and how it regenerates at each new level. You understand the specific mechanisms through which it operates, the threat response that mistakes growth for danger, the identity anchor that pulls behavior back toward the familiar, the comfort-seeking drive that makes every avoidance feel like wisdom, the fear architecture that builds walls around the most important opportunities, the imposter engine that turns achievement into evidence of inadequacy, the procrastination pattern that protects you from what you most need, the visibility trap that makes success itself a source of retreat, the emotional dysregulation that clouds the thinking you need most, and the last-mile gap that keeps insight forever separated from action. You understand all of this. And understanding it is not enough. But it is the foundation. Everything that happens from here depends on what you build on it. The reprogramming protocol you were given in Chapter 10 is not a one-time exercise. It is a practice. It requires sustained engagement across weeks, months, and years. The breakthrough execution framework is not a single event. It is a recurring discipline, applicable to every important edge you will encounter for the rest of your life. The growth identity is not something you achieve. It is something you inhabit more fully with each choice that aligns with it. The invisible ceiling will return. It will find new forms and new faces as your life expands. It will dress itself in new rationalizations and new fears at each new level. You will recognize it, because you have studied it. And recognition alone changes your relationship to it. What once felt like reality will now feel like a familiar adversary. And a familiar adversary is not nearly as formidable as an invisible one. Here is the simplest and most important thing this entire audiobook has been building toward. The breakthrough you are seeking is not on the other side of some dramatic, singular moment of courage. It is on the other side of a daily, ordinary, consistent series of small choices to engage rather than avoid, to begin rather than prepare, to act from your new identity rather than your old one, and to see the discomfort of growth as the feeling of your ceiling rising rather than the feeling of something going wrong. The ceiling is not your enemy. It was built by a mind trying to protect you with the information it had at the time. It is now simply outdated. And you have everything you need to update it. The only ceiling that is truly invisible is the one you have not yet chosen to see. You have seen yours. That changes everything. What happens next is entirely up to you. Not the circumstances around you. Not the timing. Not the economy or the market or the people in your life who are watching. You. Making the small, consistent, unremarkable choices that compound, over time, into a life that finally matches the person you have always known yourself to be capable of becoming. Begin. Not tomorrow. Not when things are quieter. Now. That is the permission you were waiting for. It was always yours. Final words, before you go, a message from MindLab Audiobooks. You made it to the end of the invisible ceiling. And that alone tells us something important about you. Most people who start an audiobook like this one never finish it. The fact that you stayed with every chapter, every concept, and every exercise tells us you are not here for inspiration. You are here for transformation. That is exactly the kind of listener we build this library for. Before we let you go, we want to do 3 things. First, we want to make sure you know about every audiobook we have already published in the MindLab library, because the work you have done today connects directly to a body of material that goes deeper into every dimension of the mind we have been exploring together. Second, we want to give you a preview of what is coming next, because it is going to matter to you. And third, we want to ask something of you that takes less than 60 seconds but means everything to the growth of this channel and the reach of these ideas. The complete MindLab Audiobooks library. The invisible ceiling is one piece of a much larger curriculum. At MindLab Audiobooks, every title we produce is designed to address a specific layer of the mental, behavioral, and financial programming that determines what your life looks like. If you found genuine value in what you heard today, the following audiobooks are already waiting for you on the MindLab channel, and each one goes deeper into territory this audiobook opened. Reprogram your limits, break free from the invisible rules holding you back. This is where the reprogramming work that Chapter 10 introduced goes to its full depth. Every invisible rule you are operating under, every belief installed before you had the ability to question it, every boundary that was drawn around your potential before you had any say in the matter, this audiobook dismantles all of it with clinical precision. If the invisible ceiling showed you where the walls are, Reprogram Your Limits hands you the tools to tear them down permanently. The Habit Code, how your daily actions are quietly controlling your entire life. You now understand the identity that drives behavior. The habit code goes inside the behavior itself and shows you exactly how your daily actions, most of them chosen for you by automatic programming rather than conscious decision, are constructing your reality one repeated moment at a time. The ceiling is maintained by habits. The habit code shows you how to replace them. The identity loop, why you cannot change your habits even when you try. This audiobook answers the single most frustrating question in personal development: why do intelligent, motivated, self-aware people keep repeating the same patterns no matter how hard they try to change? The answer is the identity loop, a mechanism this audiobook introduced and that the identity loop dissects completely. If you have ever committed fully to change and still found yourself back where you started, this is your most important next listen. The repetition trap, how your brain locks you into the same life every day. Your brain is not malfunctioning when it keeps you in the familiar. It is doing exactly what it was designed to do. The repetition trap explains the neuroscience and psychology of why human beings default to recreating the past, and gives you the specific protocols for interrupting the loop at its source. This audiobook is a direct companion to everything you learned about homeostasis and neural patterning in Chapter 2. The automatic life, how habits turn you into someone you never chose to be. One of the most unsettling and most liberating questions in the MindLab library: are you living the life you chose, or are you living the life your early conditioning chose for you? The automatic life maps the process by which unconscious repetition gradually replaces intentional living, and shows you how to reclaim authorship of your own existence. If the identity chapters of this audiobook hit close to home, this title is essential. The Wealth Script, how your money beliefs were programmed without you knowing. Every belief you carry about money, about who deserves wealth, about what is financially possible for someone like you, about how hard life should be before prosperity is earned, was written into your subconscious before you were old enough to evaluate it. The Wealth Script shows you exactly where those beliefs came from and gives you the precise rewriting process that replaces a scarcity script with one built for abundance. This is the financial identity work that Chapter 3 pointed toward. The Scarcity Loop, why thinking small keeps you poor even if you work hard. Scarcity thinking is not about having little. It is a cognitive lens that filters out opportunity, contracts ambition, and guarantees that even significant effort produces diminished results. The Scarcity Loop is one of the most financially consequential titles in the library because it addresses the mindset layer that determines whether strategies and skills convert into lasting wealth or quietly dissolve back into the familiar. The Income Identity, you earn what you believe you deserve. Your income is not primarily determined by your skills, your credentials, or the economy you are operating in. It is determined by a number you have decided, almost always unconsciously, that you are worth it. The income identity takes that number apart, examines where it came from, and rebuilds it from the inside out. This audiobook is one of the most direct and most challenging titles we have produced, and one of the most powerful. The Decision Gap, how rich minds and poor minds choose completely different futures. The gap between people who build lasting wealth and people who do not is not intelligence, not talent, and not luck. It is decision architecture. The way different minds frame choices, weigh risk, evaluate time horizons, and calculate the cost of inaction. The decision gap makes that architecture visible and shows you how to rebuild yours in the image of the outcomes you want. The opportunity filter, why some people see chances everywhere and others see nothing. Two people walk into the same room, face the same market, live in the same economy. One of them sees 5 opportunities before breakfast. The other sees none. The opportunity filter explains the neuroscience and psychology of selective perception as it applies to opportunity, and gives you the specific recalibration process that expands what your mind is capable of noticing. This audiobook connects directly to Chapter 5 of this audiobook and takes its insights to a deeper level. The leverage code: how the rich multiply effort while others trade time for money. If the invisible ceiling addressed the internal architecture keeping you below your potential, the leverage code addresses the external architecture for building a life above it. Financial leverage, human leverage, systems leverage, knowledge leverage, and how the most successful wealth builders stack all 4 into compounding returns that no single form could produce alone. This is the most practical and strategically detailed title in the library, and it is the natural companion to everything you have built in this audiobook. Every one of these titles is available right now on the MindLab Audiobooks channel. We recommend you do not wait. Every audiobook you consume adds another layer to the foundation you have been building today. Your transformation is not a single listen. It is a curriculum. And you are already enrolled. Coming up next on MindLab Audiobooks. Our next audiobook is coming very soon, and we are genuinely excited about what it is going to do for the people who hear it. It is called The Silent Majority: How Average Became the Most Dangerous Standard You Ever Accepted. Here is why this title matters so much, and why it is the natural continuation of the work you have done in the invisible ceiling. The ceiling does not only come from inside you. It also comes from the cultural water you swim in every day. From the unspoken agreement that average is safe, that fitting in is wisdom, that the person who wants more than the majority has around them is somehow arrogant, deluded, or setting themselves up for disappointment. The silent majority names that agreement, exposes its mechanism, and dismantles its authority over your choices. The most dangerous standard you ever accepted was not a conscious choice. It was absorbed. From the people around you, from the media you consumed, from the quiet but persistent message that the ceiling everyone else lives under is also the appropriate ceiling for you. This audiobook shows you exactly how that standard was installed, what it is costing you every single day you remain inside it, and what the specific path out looks like. Stay subscribed. Keep notifications on. When the silent majority drops, you will want to be the first to hear it. Because what comes next builds directly on what you learned today, and the combination of the two will be unlike anything else you have encountered in this space. Your 4 actions right now. We produce every single audiobook in this library because we believe, with genuine conviction, that the ideas inside them have the power to change lives. Not for a week. Not until motivation fades. Permanently. At the level of who you believe yourself to be and what you believe is possible for you. But that only happens if these audiobooks reach the people who need them. And that, honestly, depends entirely on you. So right now, before you close this out, before you move on to the next thing in your day, we are asking you to do 4 things. They take less than 60 seconds combined. And they make an enormous difference. First, hit the like button. This is not a small task. It is the single most important signal you can send to the platform that this content deserves to be seen. Every like tells the algorithm that someone who listened found genuine value here, and that means the next person searching for exactly what this audiobook contains is more likely to find it. If even one idea in these chapters changed how you see yourself or your situation, that click is how you say thank you in a language the platform understands. Second, leave a comment. Tell us which chapter hit you hardest for you. Tell us which concept you are going to act on first. Tell us what this audiobook made you see that you had not seen before. Your comment does not just help us understand what resonates. It creates a community of listeners who are all working on the same transformation, and it is evidence to the next person scrolling past that this audiobook is worth their time. Be that signal for someone you will never meet but may genuinely help. Third, share this audiobook with at least 7 people. Not 1. Not 2. 7. Think about the people in your life who are working hard but not getting ahead. Think about the friend who has been talking about making a change for 3 years without taking a step. Think about the family member who is gifted and driven and somehow still stuck. Think about the colleague whose potential you can see more clearly than they can. Send them this audiobook today. Not tomorrow. Today. Because the right information at the right moment can permanently change the direction of a life. You might be the reason someone you care about finally finds their breakthrough. That is not a small thing. That is one of the most meaningful things you can do with what you have just learned. Fourth, subscribe to MindLab Audiobooks right now if you have not already done so, and turn on notifications. We release new titles regularly, and every single one is designed to add another layer to the transformation you have already begun. You invested the time to listen to this audiobook. Protect that investment by making sure the next release finds you. Like, comment, share with 7 people. Subscribe to MindLab Audiobooks. These 4 actions are your first act of leverage today. And leverage, as you now know better than most, is where everything begins. The ceiling you broke today will become the floor you build on tomorrow. We will see you in the next one. MindLab Audiobooks. Reprogramming minds. Rebuilding lives. One audiobook at a time.